Hello, Jeremy here. Today I wanted to talk about this set that just came out. Brian Wilson live at the Roxy Theater by Oglio. Is it Oglio? Is that how you say it? Oglio? Oglio? Makes me think of Oblio from Harry Nilsson's The Point. Anyways, to get to the point, I want to share some of my personal feelings on this set, which are kind of all over the place, to be honest. Let's first start with the positive. Oglio, I'm going to just say it that way, Oglio has put a lot of, I think, thought and care into the packaging and presentation of this box set. And I don't have the CD version, but as far as the vinyl box set goes, it's very nice. As you can see, it's got a nice little gloss to it. It comes in this sturdy box, different cover designs. This one's nice. I'm not crazy about it, but it's nice. It's spread out over 3 different LPs. It's the second one there. We've got the original art from the CD that came out in 2000. Oh, and you get a poster. There's notes on the back here from Brian and David Leaf, his best friend who loves to write books about him. Another thing that I appreciate is that this is being re-released. It's important to acknowledge, obviously, the context around this whole performance. We take for granted now that Brian had this big second life to his career, especially as a solo artist, that happened around the late 90s. And this is really the culmination of him partnering with the Wonderments, heading out onto the road to play to a lot of his fans in a way where he was really activated and involved and engaged and seemed to want to be there, at least for a while. If you want a picture of the best time probably to see Brian play live with his band, this was probably it. I think Brian sounds probably the best that he sounded in this era of his life. It's nice just to listen to these songs and think about what must have been going through his mind as he's really getting to see that there is still so much love for him and the music that he created. So it's special. I like that this is being re-released, and I'm glad that it will be on streaming, and I'm glad that you can get records or you can get the CD. So that's good. Those are good things. The vinyl itself is okay. Mine had a few defects. I had some skips here and there. But overall, as far as just the way the pressing sounds, it sounds good. It sounds not too different from the way it was mastered back in 2000, if you had those CDs. I did. I guess the question is this worth an upgrade from that if you already have those? Well, I guess if you want it on vinyl, sure. I don't love that it's on 3 discs. I always feel like a double disc live album is already kind of pushing it as far as like how much I want to listen to live performances, even of my favorite artists. So I feel like making 3 discs, while it's really nice, and obviously they needed to do that to, I guess, encompass all of the tracks from the release. It's a lot of something that I don't listen to very often. But again, the packaging's really nice, so there's that. The next thing I want to talk about is the bonus tracks. Now this is where we're going to start getting into some of, I guess, the negative. And I just want to preface this by saying, a lot of people from the communities that I am in have started to get really upset about the way things from the Beach Boys camp and from Brian Wilson's camp are being mastered. and sometimes mixed if we're talking about certain feel flows and Sail on Sailor bonus tracks, or even the Sounds of Summer expanded edition. And a lot of that falls directly on the shoulders of Mark Lynette. Now, I've said many times on this channel, I don't have a huge beef. I don't hate Mark Lynette. I'm actually really grateful for a lot of the good things that he has done for Brian Wilson and for the Beach Boys. I love the Good Vibrations box set he did. I love the Pet Sounds stereo. I say it all the time, Wild Honey stereo is great, Smiley Smile stereo. And somewhere around the time of, at least for me, Feel Flows, the mastering just really started to have issues. It's been talked about many, many times before, but it seems like Mark's mastering style started to get very hard to listen to. A lot of treble, a lot of bass, say goodbye to the mids, very shrill, very hard on the ears. Energetic, yes. Dynamic, sure, but at what cost? And also veering almost so far away from the sounds of the original pressings and recordings that you start to wonder how faithful his presentation of this music really is, and how much of it is just a complete reimagining, which again is fine. I understand, especially on the Sounds of Summer expanded edition, that a lot of liberties were taken, and I don't mind having alternate ways of listening to a lot of Beach Boys songs, because I already have all the analog pressings. I have a lot of the original pressings, so it's nice to hear something different. But now we're getting into a time, especially now that Mark has left the Beach Boys camp, but is still in the Brian Wilson camp as far as, I think, overseeing some of these releases. We're starting to get stuff that it's not just an alternate listening experience. It's all we have of certain pieces of music. That kind of started with some of the bonus tracks on Feel Flows and Sail on Sailor. We were getting new mixes or really intense mastering on songs that had never been officially released in any form. No vintage mixes or anything, and suddenly we're getting this really intense version from Mark that is a choice, and I would rather hear something closer and more akin to what things sounded like, back when they were initially recorded and maybe assembled. And I get that for some songs there was no final assembly and you're just making do with the stems that you have. So I guess that's just down to personal taste for those things. But now we hear Mark talking about how next up is the Paley sessions, and those are going to be released. That's also been confirmed by Brian's manager, who also said this was going to be coming out soon. I'm being a bit long-winded about this, but anyways, the bonus tracks in here, for me personally, do not sound good. They are heavily auto-tuned. He's flying in vocals from performances or studio takes from Brian, like 30, 40 years earlier on some of these songs, like Let It Shine and Soul Searching. And especially on here, you get 2 bonus tracks if you get the vinyl. You get 5 if you get the CD. But on here, on those 2 bonus tracks, Brian sounds like a robot. He sounds like Wally singing Southern California, one of the most beautiful ballads of his solo career. And he doesn't sound like a human singing it. And I just don't know if that's the best way to honor Brian's memory. I get that that's not primarily what this release is about, those bonus tracks, but they did promote this release around these exclusives to the physical issues, which were the bonus tracks, and all of those have these mastering issues. And I don't know why that is. A lot of these songs are taken from other parts, other times in Brian's career, and they're not from the Roxy performances. So the Roxy performances all sound fine. They sound pretty much like they did, like I said, on the original CD. But these new songs even though they're from other times, I'm not expecting them to sound exactly like the Roxy performances. I'm just expecting Brian to sound like a human being. And it's a bummer. It just feels like with every release, Mark's mastering decisions get objectively worse. And I don't know if there are people in the Beach Boys circle that, if that was one of the reasons why Mark was let go. And I don't know if there's people in the Brian Wilson camp who also have qualms. I'm not trying to get Mark fired. I just think that this music is important. And especially if we're talking about the Paley sessions finally being released for the first time, that's an important release. And to have it being filtered through this very extreme way, and then that's all we get, I understand why people are a little bit antsy, and I understand why people are a little bit upset. I'm not going to return this because of those bonus tracks. I want to support these Brian Wilson releases coming out, but it's getting harder and harder to justify spending money on things when Mark Lynette's name is attached to it. Again, as a person, I don't know Mark. I don't know him. Again, he has put in so many years of doing great work. I just feel like the last couple of releases have really missed the mark. That's a pun. I hope for those Paley releases, if they happen, that they are done in a tasteful way, in a way that, sure, sound current, that's fine, but also sound true to, the environment in which they were recorded. I know that mastering can come down to personal taste, but I do think things are getting objectively bad. So anyways, all that to say, overall, I think this is a good release. If you're going to get this just for the bonus tracks, beware, they don't sound very good, at least in my opinion. But if you want to get this because you love Live at the Roxy and Brian's performances there, the whole show, that sounds fine. It sounds good. Oglio has done a good job at putting this out, at packaging it, at presenting it in a thoughtful way. So that's my 2 cents. If you have any thoughts about it, feel free to let me know down in the comments. That's it.